Welcome to the channel, AI Champions Hub. I sincerely thank you for taking time to watch. I know there's a lot going on in AI world, and to keep it simple, I really want to get folks kickstarted. I'm back to do a couple of other series, even though there's quite going on from an AI standpoint. So this is a basic series where I'm going to get people started, in terms of whether it's coding or no code approach to really tap the LLMs and the AI model so that they can go and build applications. Because I frankly believe that while many in the tech world have kickstarted, many in the business world or otherwise may not have really started using the power. And this is really a key disruption I don't want anybody to miss, right? So we will do a couple of these series. So I'm going to do a set of building blocks, step by step way of getting you started, start walking, then jogging, then running, right? And we will build on these applications as we go along. And if you can post your comments, what would you like to learn? Then I will prioritize those as well. But otherwise, I do have a plan. I do have coaching, um, learning paths that I keep teaching and so on. So I know what has worked in the past, but happy to factor your comments. All right, let's get started. So today's session is really to get you started in terms of interacting with the large language models, right? So large language models are the bread and butter behind a lot of the innovation that we have seen. And there are, unless you've not had a chance to interact, right? There are, I'm sure you might have, most of them would have played with ChatGPT or so on and so forth, right? So we know what is going on, but there are two ways to interact with a large language model, two broad ways in the context of what we are talking about, right? One is where the LLM providers, like a ChatGPT, which is provided by OpenAI, they do give you an interface and an application where you can start asking questions to the LLM. But this is within their interface, their UI, and the website where you can start interacting and then you use it and then you come out, right? But in the real business world or the enterprise world, you really need ability to interact with these large language models in a similar fashion, but at the same time, you want to have larger control, right? So enterprises, any kind of business, they have other applications like a CRM, like a customer service, or so on and so forth. And you want these AI capability to be integrated into these applications, right? And one of the other methods to do that is through what is called as an application programming interface, which is to say one code talks to the other code and in the similar manner like you're interacting with the application, now you can interact through your custom application, interact with the LLM, get the response, and then do whatever you want to do, right? So we are going to look at this method too today and get you started with the simplest way of interacting with an LLM, right? So the LLMs are very powerful. They are general intelligence in the sense that they have generic intelligence. I shouldn't say general intelligence yet. Generic intelligence because they've been programmed on or learned on large body of text, whether it's Wikipedia, Reddit, you have it, you name it, the LLMs have been trained on in terms of publicly available content or other content, right? So there's generalization of the knowledge. The second thing is, therefore, they are able to help us with variety of tasks like text generation, summarization, giving you new product images, and so on and so forth. But the biggest power is their ability to understand or interact with you in a natural language, right? So that's really a bigger element that I see from a business standpoint because otherwise you are stuck to these applications which had their own interfaces and so on. So now I can interact in a natural language fashion, and that's really a game changer as well, right? So many game changers in this process, but that's something I want to highlight. Okay. All right, let's get started building a small LLM interaction application at a basic level, right? So if you look at it, there are multiple methods to interacting with these applications, and I will leave some of these documents with you so that you can get started and get going. So the LLM providers like an OpenAI or Anthropic or Googles of the world, they do host these services and you can interact with them. And there is something called a chat completion API, which is their own way of exposing the LLM so that you can start interacting with them, right? So that's one method. The same providers are able to also help you with a larger, a better way, which is called the assistant APIs or so on. And we will see that in the next videos and so on and so forth, right? So these interactions need memory, they need conversation approach, and so on and so forth. So therefore, you need something more than a one-time call, right? So that's where the assistant APIs come in, and a lot more other features that they're packing in, right? Then third, there are frameworks that are becoming available. These frameworks are making it easy for us to interact with many of these providers, right? So if you go with method one, which is what we are going to look at in today's class, where I use the custom APIs that the LLM provider would have provided. So in this case, OpenAI gives you their way of interacting with their model, and I will use that, right? So as a starting point. But that really restricts me in terms of talking to OpenAI. Tomorrow, if I want to switch to something else, then it becomes difficult and I may have to program to these other API formats and so on and so forth. So therefore, what we are talking about is other methods that are coming in, and we will see these other methods. But let's just get started with making a call to OpenAI and see how we can get going with an interaction. Okay. So these are pros and cons. I've listed that. Easy to get started when it's only one vendor and it's a contract between you and the vendor, where they're saying, hey, ask me in this format, and then my LLMs will be able to respond to you in a particular format, right? And we will see that. So before I get kick started, one of the basic requirements is we need an API key. So what that means is you establish an account with an OpenAI, and I will show some of this as we go along in this video. So you set up an account with the provider. They would identify you on your conversations using a key or a token, right? That's between you and the provider, right? So any conversations, anytime you're interacting, they will be able to track that, and then there is billing and metering, as some of these services are not free. Okay, so getting the key is one of the first steps. That's quite easy. We'll see that. And then we start to look at the documentation and start to write the code. Okay, so now if I go, how do I go and get this key, right? The first step is, so just go to OpenAI, openai.com, open your browser, log in, right? So if you're first time, you may want to sign in. I'm already a user on the platform and I already have my account set up here. So I'm just going to try and see if I can log in with one of these accounts, right? So it's basically going to log in and we will be able to see the keys, right? So now I'm here and then I'm trying to see if I can get the API key to be shown to you. So here, if you look at it, right? I think it's one of these auth keys or so. Give me 1 second. Okay, session tokens. Or give me 1 second. I think it should be here. Okay, so here are your API keys. So once you go to this, usually there's a setting, and under the settings, you should be able to look at one of these options. There are multiple options in this. So API key is one of the options, right? Now we can create our own key. Just say test key, and then it'll generate a key for your project, right? And then if you are an enterprise, you could be running multiple projects, and you could look at that, right? So I have a bunch of keys. If I just click on it, it's going to create a key, and then it'll allow me to use one of them, right? So all you have to do is Maybe I'll just show you the full step. So just say test key or whatever name you want to give it that key, use your default project if you just have one of these projects, and then now this key is available, I can copy that. Okay. So once that's available, you want to store these keys in a secret place, ideally like your environment variable or a or a vault or any of these. Okay. Now there are multiple ways of going about doing coding, right? So there are applications which allow you to do coding, and we will see some of these coding steps as well. But one of the easiest ways to go to the web, there are many web-based tools. You don't have to install anything on your local, and I will show one of that option as well today, right? But the way to store these keys is if you're working on Windows or Mac, you can go and store these in your environment variables in Windows or your profile in Mac. I'm using Mac, so let me go and show you where I would probably quickly store these, right? So if I go here, for example, I'm just going to go to my profile and open one of my profile files here. So give me 1 second. Yeah, one of your profile files. Now I already have these keys. So what I would suggest is just put your key here, export it, add an export statement of some kind, right? And then export OpenAI key and put your key, whatever you copied. And then next time it becomes part of the profile that you're working with, right? In Windows, it's a lot more easier. You can just open the environment variable and go from there. Okay. All right. So to make it easy, what I would suggest is just get started by, since you copied the key, you can just start using it. Now, let's start with the interface. Like I said, you need a application that will understand the programming language and so on. So you can, now Google provides a wonderful platform called Colab, right? So you can search, type this colab.research.google.com, and it'll allow you to go and create a new what is called as a notebook, right? A notebook, I will do a separate session on that. A notebook really is a powerful tool which doesn't only allow you to write code, but gives you a lot more surround elements in terms of commentaries, in terms of how I want to structure my story, and processing and steps and so on and so forth, right? So I could just add simple elements saying, hey, this is my first code for interacting with an LLM or something like that, right? So as simple as that, just you can just get kick started. There are two options, text and code. I will do a separate video and share that in terms of how you can go get going with these, right? Now I was talking about the key. So within this environment, you can store, you will see this key button. You can store your keys here. I've already stored my OpenAI key. You can add another key, whatever you copied, you can just put it here. This, I'm just going to give it this test key. You wanted to have you want to give it a proper name, but just for illustration, I'm just giving it some key, right? So name it OpenAI key and so on. And then once you've set up that key, you will be able to enable it for every notebook, right? Let's say in this notebook, I'm not using the keys from other or tokens from other providers. I won't enable them. So here we are going to use the OpenAI key, and we will just go with that. Okay. Now, this is one way of looking at it and one way of accessing the key, and that's what we're going to see here as well. Okay. So before we get started, how do I start interacting with an LLM, right? So first is this key. Let's just copy this sample code that's available for us. So you can just copy these double boxes allow you to do a quick copy. So I'm just going to copy that, and then this is my secret key. So they're saying, just copy that secret key and you will be able to use it. Just store it in a variable somewhere, and you can use it when we are making calls to the LLMs, right? So like I said, the LLM needs to know that you are the person and this is the key that you're using. Okay. All right. So we will get going with that. That's our first step. We've just read the key and we are good to go in terms of this. Now let's go and look at how I can go and start using the LLM, so to speak, right? So here, if I go to OpenAI documents, right? So you can go to the core of the platform, right? Or just say, let's just go here, right? So you will be able to see the documentation. Yeah, platform.openai, just type docs and you will be able to see the documentation for OpenAI. They've done an excellent job of getting you going with a lot of this, right? So now the LLMs are capable of many things and we will see many of these features. So one of the basic things is to do text related interactions and so on, right? And text generation is one of the simplest and probably the common first sort of application many get started with. And when you look at the documentation, you will see the text generation related API calls and then the prompt related to that, right? Now let's take this. So this is our sample code. You don't have to worry about mastering all that on day one. Just understand that this is a sample code that we are going to use, right? So I'm just going to copy the same like I showed you the other places. And now we will look at each of these elements, right? Now, what do I need to interact with the LLM? I need to get their library, and which is what we are talking about here when they say OpenAI. It's a library that we are going to talk to. Right now, usually this library has to be installed. We use this command called pip install OpenAI, and that will allow me to install the required libraries or packages related to that interaction, right? So in Python, that's an easy way of importing whatever you want to use. You don't have to include everything in one shot. Include them when you need, okay? So now that I have the library installed, I can make this call and I should be able to start interacting. Let me just break this into two separate steps so you get to know what we are talking about here, right? Now, when we talk about this, so there are certain parameters we have to talk about. Now we said we have the key that's your key that you opened, you set up your login account and so on. So we need to pass that to this as a parameter to the OpenAI call, which is essentially saying open a connection to OpenAI LLM, and then let's start using that to interact, right? So here we are saying, show me the API key. Usually you will not have to, you will get a lot of the help to, so that you don't have to remember the options and type everything, right? But sometimes it takes a little bit of time to, for that help to pop up. Okay. All right. So now I have my key. That's the main parameter. There are a couple of other parameters like temperature and other things, which we will learn later. But all you have to do is now go and open this, right? Or go and, open a connection to the LLM. So now I have the connection. So the basic other step is to say, hey, what model am I going to use? Like I said, the provider, LLM provider, whether it's Anthropic or OpenAI, they have their own format of saying, send me the prompt in this fashion. Prompt is nothing but your question, and then I will send you a response in a certain fashion, right? So my input to the LLM is in this format that we have already seen in the documentation, right? We already saw that text generation uses this. So they use what is called as a chat completion API, which is a basic API where it's a direct call to OpenAI, and we are using their library and then their method, right? And all I'm saying is give me a chat type of interaction, which is to ask a question and then you get a response, right? So that's one type of interaction, and we are going to go with that. Now, the second element is the model, right? So now you don't necessarily need the latest and greatest model for a simple task like a text generation or so on, right? you could go with a simpler model. But if you choose to go with 4.0, that's fine, or GPT mini or so on and so forth. I usually tend to go with a simpler model, like one of the older models, so that you don't have to pay so much for your meter, and move to the higher model later when we are good to go, right? So I'm just going to copy this here. All I'm doing is keeping the name of the other model for future use if you choose to, right? And otherwise, I'm just going to use GPT 3.5. Why am I doing that? If you go to the model and the pricing, you will see that each of the models have their own pricing. Each token will cost you some money, and those details are available per model, right? So some of the older models, if you look at it, their pricing will be much lower. The newer models are going to be much more expensive. So, and some of the smaller models are going to be lot cheaper. Okay, so 4.0 and 4.1, they are a little more expensive. O3 Mini is much cheaper, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these older models is what we are using now because you're learning the rope, and that should be good enough. Okay, so just to avoid confusion, I'm just going to remove this, put it in a comment box or a text model, right? So that in future I can use it. So if I don't use this, it will not come as a heading, it will just come as a commentary. Okay, so this is my code. So all I'm saying is use this model, and then the message and the prompt needs to be given in a certain format. We saw that. So you have to indicate, so there is a AI that you're interacting with, and you as a user, you're passing a message, and this back and forth conversation may have to be traced at some point. So to keep it simple, for starters, we are saying, hey, I'm a user, this is my message, and I want a response to this message, right? So this is what is called as a dictionary. Dictionary is certain parameter and then the value of the parameter, right? So in this case, role is a standard parameter you have to pass, and then I could be user, I could be AI, I could be playing any of the roles. Okay. Then the second parameter is the content. Now, content is nothing but the question that you want to ask the model, right? So this is the prompt that we're going to ask. So here, OpenAI gave this example saying, hey, write one sentence about bedtime story about an unicorn. Or I would say, hey, just to, on a lighter note, let's say, can you please, can you give me a joke on unicorns, right? Something like that. Okay. So let's see what happens. Right now, all I'm doing is I'm just going to run this, and give me 1 second. I forgot the comma when I removed it. So this is the error you get, right? It's nothing, no big deal. Just fix the error. And today the editors are very good in fixing the errors as well. You don't need to necessarily worry about all the syntax. Okay, so now I have completed this. This is run the code. I have my chat, and then I have my response. All right. Now, how do I read the response? The return object will have certain elements which I can go and look at to see what the message is. Now, we already said there's going to be back and forth between the LLM and the application, right? Usually it's not just one conversation. So then you can go and look at multiple of these messages. All right. So to begin with, let's just see what the response has been, right? So because we are interested in the response. So the joke is, why did the unicorn sit on the thorn? Because he was the ruler of the magical kingdom, or so on and so forth, right? So it's a joke, and that's fine. You can ask any question, but this is something that we are talking about, right? And you could ask other questions like, what is the favorite sport of let's say Brazil or something like that, right? Which is common knowledge. Now I run the prompt again, and then I get to see the response, right? Football or soccer is the most popular sport in Brazil. We know all that. Okay. All right. So this is a simple way, just couple of steps. What did we do as a recap? We established the API key. Then we made a call to the library. We had stored that API key one time in a secret place, and then you could use the same approach, right? if you had stored it in the environment variable, you may have to load it, and I will show that in the next class. But for starters, just to keep it simple, just get your key. You could have stored it here as well, but that's not a good practice. So store it as a secret, and then install the libraries that are needed. So in this case, we are only using OpenAI, so that's the library. And then I'm just going to open the connection to the library, make a call to the send my prompt to this connection or the tunnel or the library that we are talking about, consume the response by displaying or acting on it, right? So this is just a text or a string, and now I can start doing other things with this response. Okay, so there you have it. It's simple approach where now programmatically, as you saw here, you are able to start talking to a LLM programmatically. That's a very simple way. There are advanced techniques which we will see as we go along, but this is just to get you kick-started, simple manner, right? Now, what is the advantage of this? I am not dependent on the provider's interface. They could change it anytime. There could be other things that are coming in. But if I have my own application, I'm building something, then I can integrate a lot of this capability, which is a very powerful capability of AI, into my other applications. I can integrate with my CRM, with my employee HRMS application, or any kind of other application, right? Or my web portal for a customer service chat, or so on and so forth. And that's what the world is doing today. With a lot of these applications are becoming AI enabled. And when we say AI enabled, they are able to use the AI and collaborate with AI, right? Which is the purpose of this channel, is to say, how am I going to collaborate with the AI to get my task going? And that's the larger purpose in terms of this channel, where I'm going to talk about a lot of examples and show you how these collaborations can happen so that we can build applications as we go along. If you like the video, the comment and hit the like button, and let me know in the comment if I can make it any more simple, or if you didn't understand any part of it, I'm happy to explain as well. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.